Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he checked the mining equipment one more time. The deep tunnels of Kepler 442b were hot and dangerous, but the rare metals found here made the risk worth it. At least that's what the colony administrators kept telling everyone. The mining station buzzed with activity. Humans worked alongside aliens from 3 different species. The tall, thin Kethanari with their blue skin handled the delicate electronics. The rock-hard Gorlians used their massive strength to move heavy equipment. And the insect-like Vexhi, with their sharp claws and tough shells, worked in the deepest and most dangerous parts of the mines. Marcus had been on Kepler 442b for 2 years now. As the chief engineer, he made sure all the equipment worked properly. It wasn't easy keeping everything running when you had to account for so many different alien needs. The Kethanari needed cooler temperatures. The Gorlians required stronger platforms to support their weight. The Vexhi needed special air filters because human atmosphere made them sick. "Marcus, we have a problem in Tunnel 7, came a voice over his radio. It was Sarah, one of the other human engineers. The Vexhi team reports strange vibrations in the rock. Marcus grabbed his emergency kit and headed toward Tunnel 7. The Vexhi were good at sensing things humans couldn't. If they felt vibrations, it usually meant trouble. As he walked through the winding corridors, Marcus thought about how much his life had changed. 2 years ago, he was fixing air conditioners in New York. Now he was keeping alien mining equipment running on a planet 300 light-years from Earth. The pay was amazing, but some days he wondered if it was worth being so far from home. The entrance to Tunnel 7 was busy with activity. Several Vexhi workers stood outside, their antennae twitching nervously. Marcus could see why they were worried. Even he could feel a slight tremor in the floor. "Where's the team leader?" Marcus asked one of the human supervisors. "Zarathi took a small group deeper in about an hour ago. She wanted to check the new mining phase before we started the heavy equipment." Marcus knew Zarathi. She was one of the larger Vexhi, about 8 feet tall with a dark green shell. Unlike many of her species, she had learned some basic human language. Most Vexhi communicated through chemical signals and clicks that the translation computers struggled with. Another tremor shook the ground, stronger this time. Marcus made a decision. "I'm going in to find them. Keep everyone else out until I give the all-clear." "Marcus, that might not be safe," Sarah warned. "It's definitely not safe for them to be trapped in there if this tunnel collapses." Marcus grabbed a portable scanner and headed into Tunnel 7. The air grew thicker as he went deeper. The Vexhi preferred higher humidity, so their work areas were always uncomfortable for humans. His scanner showed normal air quality, but the vibrations were getting stronger. After 20 minutes of walking through twisting passages, Marcus heard sounds ahead. Not the usual clicking of Vexhi communication, but something that sounded almost like crying. He hurried forward and found a terrible scene. Part of the tunnel had already collapsed. Rocks blocked the main passage and dust filled the air. Through the haze, Marcus could see Zarathi and 2 other Vexhi trapped in a small pocket of space. But what made his heart race was the small form lying motionless near Zarathi's feet. "Zarathi," Marcus called out as he climbed over the fallen rocks. The large alien turned toward him, her compound eyes reflecting his helmet light. She made a series of urgent clicks and pointed to the small form beside her. Marcus realized it was a Vexhi child, probably Zarathi's offspring. The little alien was barely breathing. Marcus had heard that some Vexhi brought their children to work. The species believed in teaching their young through direct experience, but this child was in serious trouble. The air in the collapsed area smelled wrong. Marcus checked his scanner and saw the problem immediately. Toxic gases were leaking from a broken pipe. The chemicals weren't dangerous to humans in small amounts, but they were deadly to Vexhi respiratory systems. "The air is poisoned," Marcus said, though he wasn't sure if Zarathi understood. He pointed to his scanner and then to the child. Zarathi's response was immediate and heartbreaking. She picked up her child and held it close, making soft clicking sounds. The other 2 Vexhi workers looked at Marcus with what he could only describe as desperate hope. Marcus opened his emergency medical kit. He had basic antidotes for most common industrial chemicals, but they were designed for human biology. Giving them to an alien child could make things worse or do nothing at all, but doing nothing would definitely mean the child would die. Marcus looked at his medical supplies and had a crazy idea. The antidote needed to be processed by a human liver to work properly. But what if he could make that happen outside his body? This is insane, he muttered to himself as he pulled out a blood transfusion kit. The emergency medical training he'd received before coming to Kepler 442b had covered field blood transfusions, but never anything like this. Marcus quickly injected himself with the antidote, then began setting up the transfusion equipment. He needed to get his treated blood into the alien child's system. The problem was that Vexhi and human blood were completely different. The child's body would reject human blood cells immediately, but maybe it didn't need the blood cells. Maybe it just needed the processed antidote. Using tubing from the medical kit and a portable filter from his engineering tools, Marcus created a makeshift system. He would transfuse his blood into a filter that would separate the plasma containing the antidote from the blood cells, then pump just the plasma into the child. Zarathi watched his preparations with growing understanding. When Marcus pointed to himself, then to the tubing, then to her child, she nodded vigorously. She understood what he was trying to do. The procedure was dangerous for both Marcus and the child. Too much human plasma could kill the little alien. Too little wouldn't neutralize the poison. And Marcus would be losing a lot of blood in the process. But he had to try. Marcus inserted the needle into his arm and watched his blood flow into the improvised filtering system. The portable filter hummed as it separated plasma from blood cells. Clear fluid began to flow through the output tube. Zarathi held her child steady as Marcus carefully inserted the other needle into what he hoped was the equivalent of a vein on the small alien's arm. The child's breathing was so shallow it was barely visible. For 30 minutes Marcus lay on the rocky floor, connected to the dying alien child by tubes and determination. He gave as much plasma as he dared, fighting off dizziness as his blood pressure dropped. Slowly, incredibly, the child's breathing became stronger. Its color changed from a sickly gray to a healthier green. After what felt like hours, the little alien opened its eyes. Zarathi made a sound Marcus had never heard from a Vexhi before. It was almost musical, like a song of pure joy. She gathered her child in her arms and looked at Marcus with an expression he couldn't quite read. Marcus tried to sit up but collapsed back down. He had given too much blood. The world started to spin, and darkness crept in from the edges of his vision. The last thing he remembered was Zarathi carefully lifting him up, cradling both him and her child against her armored chest. Her clicking sounds had changed to something that sounded almost like a lullaby. When the rescue teams finally broke through the collapsed tunnel 6 hours later, they found a scene that would be talked about for years. A human engineer lay unconscious in the arms of a giant alien mother, while her healthy child slept peacefully between them. 3 months had passed since the tunnel collapse, and Marcus was finally feeling like himself again. The doctors had kept him in the medical bay for 2 weeks, making sure the blood loss hadn't caused any permanent damage. They were amazed that his crazy blood transfusion idea had actually worked. But something strange had started happening. Everywhere Marcus went, Zarathi was there too. At first he thought it was just coincidence. The mining colony wasn't that big, and everyone ran into each other regularly. But after a few weeks, Marcus realized that Zarathi was actually following him. When he went to the cafeteria, she would appear a few minutes later. When he worked on equipment repairs, she would find reasons to be in the same area. "It's getting weird," Marcus told his friend Dave over lunch. Dave was another human engineer who had been on Kepler 442b for 3 years. "She's always watching me. Sometimes I wake up and see her standing outside my quarters." Dave laughed. "Maybe she has a crush on you. Interspecies romance is all the rage these days. It's not funny. Yesterday she followed me to the shower facilities and just waited outside for 2 hours." The truth was, Marcus found Zarathi's behavior more confusing than scary. She never seemed threatening. If anything, she acted protective. When other aliens got too close to Marcus, she would position herself between them. When he was working with dangerous equipment, she would hover nearby, ready to help. Marcus decided to find out what was going on. He had learned some basic Vexhi language since arriving on the colony, though the clicking sounds were hard for human throats to make. He found Zarathi in her usual spot near the engineering bay and approached her. "Zarathi, can we talk?" The large alien turned toward him, her antennae twitching, and what Marcus had learned was a sign of attention. She spoke in her broken human language, something she had been practicing more since the tunnel incident. "Yes, Marcus friend, talk good. Why do you follow me everywhere?" Zarathi was quiet for a long moment. Then she began speaking in her own language, clicking and chirping rapidly. Marcus caught a few words he recognized, but most of it was too fast. "Slow, please," Marcus said, and Vexhai Zarathi tried again, mixing her language with human words. "You save small one. My child life. Now I have debt bond. Kethvar." Marcus had never heard the word Kethvar before. He made a note to look it up in the translation database later, but he was starting to understand that this was about more than simple gratitude. "You don't owe me anything," Marcus said. "I helped because it was the right thing to do." Zarathi's head tilted in a way that reminded Marcus of a confused dog. "Not owe bond, you give lifeblood. Now you're family protection." That evening, Marcus spent hours searching through the colony's cultural database. What he found made him understand why Zarathi had been acting so strangely. Kethvar was an ancient Vexhai tradition. When someone saved the life of a Vexhai child, especially through personal sacrifice, they became bound to that family forever. The parent was honor-bound to protect the lifesaver with their own life. It wasn't a debt that could be repaid. It was a permanent change in relationship. According to the database, Kethvar bonds were so strong that they overrode almost all other social obligations. A Vexhai bound by Kethvar would abandon their own safety, their job, even their other family members to protect the person who saved their child. Marcus sat back in his chair, feeling overwhelmed. He had saved a child's life and accidentally made himself part of an alien family. No wonder Zarathi had been following him everywhere. The next day, Marcus tried to explain to Zarathi that he didn't need protection. He was a grown man who could take care of himself. But every attempt at conversation just seemed to make her more determined to stay close. Things came to a head when Marcus was assigned to a dangerous survey mission. The colony needed someone to check on some automated mining equipment that had stopped working in the far northern region. It was a routine job, but the area was known for unstable weather and rough terrain. Marcus was packing his equipment when Zarathi appeared in his quarters. She had never come inside before, and her presence made the small room feel even smaller. "You go to Danger Place," she said. "It's just a routine equipment check. I'll be back in 3 days." Zarathi's antennae drooped, and she made a low clicking sound that Marcus had learned meant distress. "I go with Marcus, friend." "You can't. This is a human assignment. Besides, you have your own work here." For the first time since Marcus had known her, Zarathi became agitated. She began pacing back and forth in the small room, her claws clicking on the metal floor. Her clicking became rapid and urgent. "No, leave alone. Kethvar says protect. I go or you no go." Marcus tried to reason with her, but Zarathi was unmovable. When he went to report to the transport shuttle the next morning, she was waiting there with her own gear packed. The shuttle pilot, a gruff human named Rodriguez, looked at the alien with confusion. "What's she doing here?" "This is a human-only mission." "Apparently it's not anymore," Marcus said with a sigh. Rodriguez shook his head. "I can't authorize alien personnel without proper paperwork. Colony regulations." Zarathi must have understood enough of the conversation to know what was happening. She stepped forward and spoke in careful human words. "Marcus' friend saved child life. I am Kethvar bound. Where he goes, I go. This is Vexhai law." "Well, that's nice, but this is a human colony with human rules," Rodriguez said. What happened next surprised everyone. Zarathi moved faster than Marcus had ever seen her move. One moment she was standing peacefully by the shuttle, the next she was blocking the entrance with her large body. No Marcus go without Zarathi. No transport leave. The situation quickly escalated. Rodriguez called for security, but when the guards arrived, they found themselves facing a very large, very determined alien who showed no signs of backing down. Zarathi wasn't threatening anyone, but she made it clear that she would not allow Marcus to leave without her. Colony Administrator Peterson arrived an hour later, looking tired and frustrated. Marcus had seen Peterson before, but never spoken to him directly. The administrator was a thin man with gray hair who always looked like he had too many problems to solve. "What exactly is the situation here?" Peterson asked. Marcus explained about the Kethvar bond and Zarathi's insistence on protecting him. Peterson listened, occasionally asking questions about Vexhai customs. "So you're telling me that we have an alien who believes she is legally obligated to protect one of our engineers, and she's willing to block official colony operations to do it?" "That's about right," Marcus said. Peterson looked at Zarathi, who was still blocking the shuttle entrance. "And there's no way to release her from this obligation?" According to the cultural database, Kethvar bonds only end when either the protector or the protected dies. Peterson rubbed his temples. Wonderful. So we either send them both on the mission or we don't send anyone. The standoff lasted 3 more hours. During that time, more Vexi workers began to gather around the shuttle. Marcus realized they were supporting Zarathi's position. To them, she was doing exactly what honor demanded. Finally, Peterson made a decision. Fine, they both go. But this sets a dangerous precedent. We can't have aliens dictating the terms of human operations. As the shuttle finally took off with both Marcus and Zarathi aboard, Marcus wondered what he had gotten himself into. Through the small window, he could see the colony growing smaller below them. Next to him, Zarathi sat quietly, her compound eyes fixed on the horizon ahead. Marcus had a feeling that his simple equipment check was about to become much more complicated. The northern mining station looked abandoned when their shuttle landed. Marcus could see the automated equipment scattered across the rocky landscape, but none of it was moving. Solar panels that should have been tracking the sun hung at odd angles. Processing units that should have been humming with activity sat silent. Looks like a complete system failure, Marcus said as he and Zarathi climbed out of the shuttle. The pilot, Rodriguez, was eager to leave. I'll be back in 3 days to pick you up. Try not to cause any more diplomatic incidents while I'm gone. As the shuttle disappeared into the sky, Marcus felt very alone. The northern region of Kepler 442b was beautiful but harsh. Red rocks stretched to the horizon under a pale orange sky. The air was thin enough that he needed his breathing mask, though Zarathi seemed comfortable. Stay close, Marcus told her as they walked toward the first piece of broken equipment. The weather can change quickly out here. Zarathi made a clicking sound that Marcus had learned meant agreement, but he noticed she was moving differently than usual. Her head turned constantly, scanning their surroundings. Her antennae twitched in patterns he hadn't seen before. Something wrong? Marcus asked. Smells strange, Zarathi said in her broken human language. Not good smell. Marcus trusted Zarathi's senses. The Vexi could detect things that human equipment missed. If she smelled something unusual, it was worth paying attention to. The first mining unit had been completely torn apart. Marcus had expected to find electrical failures or maybe storm damage. Instead, he found twisted metal and scattered components. Something had physically destroyed the equipment. This wasn't a malfunction, Marcus said, examining the wreckage. Something attacked these machines. As they moved from one destroyed unit to the next, the pattern became clear. Every piece of equipment had been systematically dismantled. Not randomly broken, but carefully taken apart by something that understood technology. Zarathi became more agitated as they worked. Her clicking became rapid and urgent. She kept positioning herself between Marcus and the open landscape. What is it? Marcus asked. Before Zarathi could answer, Marcus heard a sound that made his blood freeze. It was like a howl, but deeper and more menacing than any animal he knew. The sound echoed across the rocky terrain, seeming to come from multiple directions at once. Zarathi's response was immediate. She grabbed Marcus and pulled him behind a large boulder. Her claws extended and she made a low hissing sound that Marcus had never heard from her before. What was that? Marcus whispered. Devourers, Zarathi said. The fear in her voice was unmistakable. They hunt in packs. Kill everything. Marcus had heard stories about the Devourers. They were a nomadic species that traveled between systems, attacking colonies and taking whatever they wanted. Most people thought they were just scary stories told to keep colonists from wandering too far from settlements. Another howl echoed across the landscape, closer this time. Marcus could hear movement among the rocks, the sound of many feet moving quickly toward their position. How many? Marcus asked. Zarathi's antennae twitched as she analyzed scents and sounds. Many, too many. The first devourer appeared on a ridge about 100 meters away. Marcus had never seen one before, and he hoped he never would again. It was roughly humanoid but larger, with mottled gray skin and too many teeth. Its arms were longer than they should be, ending in claws that looked like they could cut through metal. More devourers appeared on the surrounding ridges. Marcus counted at least a dozen, probably more. They moved with the coordination of a pack surrounding their prey before attacking. Can we outrun them? Marcus asked. Zarathi's head shook in what Marcus recognized as a negative gesture. They faster. But I fight. You hide. I'm not leaving you to fight them alone. Before Zarathi could argue, the Devourers attacked. They moved faster than Marcus would have thought possible, leaping from rock to rock like some kind of nightmare. Predators. What happened next changed everything. Marcus thought he knew about the HFY. Zarathi stood up from behind their cover and let out a sound that was part roar, part battle cry. The first Devourer to reach her was knocked back 20 feet by a single swipe of her claws. Her shell, which had always seemed decorative to Marcus, proved to be serious armor. Energy weapons that the Devourers fired bounced off harmlessly, but there were too many of them. For every Devourer that Zarathi knocked down, 2 more took its place. Marcus watched in horror as she fought with skills and ferocity he had never imagined. "Run," Zarathi shouted without looking back.
"Find shelter."
Marcus didn't want to leave her, but he realized he was just a liability in this fight. He grabbed his emergency kit and ran toward a cluster of mining equipment, hoping to find some kind of defensible position. Behind him, he could hear the sounds of battle. Zarathi's clicks had become something like war cries, mixed with the howls and shrieks of the Devourers. When Marcus finally found cover behind an overturned processing unit, he turned back to see an incredible sight. Zarathi was holding her own against the entire pack. Her movements were precise and deadly. She had positioned herself in a narrow gap between 2 large rocks, preventing the Devourers from surrounding her. One by one she was defeating them, but Marcus could see that she was getting tired. Green fluid, HFY blood, was seeping through cracks in her shell. The Devourers were wearing her down through sheer numbers. Marcus looked at his emergency kit and made a decision. He pulled out the signal flare that was supposed to be used only in life-or-death emergencies. The bright red flame shot into the sky, visible for kilometers in every direction. The flare had an unexpected effect. The Devourers stopped attacking and looked up at the light. For a moment, the battlefield was quiet except for the sound of heavy breathing. Then the pack leader, a Devourer larger than the others, let out a howl and pointed at Marcus's position. Half the pack broke off from attacking Zarathi and headed toward him. No. Zarathi's cry was filled with anguish. She tried to follow them, but the remaining Devourers blocked her path. Marcus ran. He had no weapons except a small cutting torch from his engineering kit. Against creatures that could tear apart mining equipment with their bare claws, it wasn't much. But it was all he had. The Devourers were fast, but Marcus knew the terrain better. He had spent the day studying the layout of the mining site. He led them through the broken equipment, using the wreckage to slow them down and limit their ability to surround him. When the first Devourer got close enough, Marcus surprised it with the cutting torch. The bright flame made the creature recoil, buying him a few precious seconds to keep running. But Marcus knew he couldn't run forever. The Devourers were tireless, and they were learning his tactics. Soon they would corner him, and that would be the end. That's when Zarathi appeared. She had finished with the other half of the pack and tracked the remainder by scent, but she looked terrible. Her shell was cracked in several places, and she was moving more slowly than before. "Together," she said as she reached Marcus's position. "We fight together." For the next hour, Marcus and Zarathi fought side by side against the remaining Devourers. Marcus used his cutting torch and knowledge of the equipment to create traps and obstacles. Zarathi used her strength and claws to protect him when the creatures got too close. Slowly, working together, they defeated the pack. When the last Devourer fell, both Marcus and Zarathi collapsed from exhaustion. "Thank you," Marcus said as he tried to catch his breath. Zarathi looked at him with what he was learning to recognize as affection. "You fought well, Marcus, friend. Like true warrior." As they waited for rescue, Marcus realized that everything had changed. Zarathi wasn't just protecting him out of obligation anymore. They had become something like partners, and Marcus was beginning to understand that the bond between them went deeper than either of them had expected. The rescue shuttle arrived 6 hours later to find them sitting together among the wreckage, sharing water and tending each other's wounds. Marcus knew that whatever happened next, he and Zarathi were connected in a way that transcended species. The rescue shuttle barely made it back to the colony. Both Marcus and Zarathi needed medical attention, and the story of their fight against the Devourers spread quickly through the settlement. By the time they were released from the medical bay, everything had changed. Marcus found his quarters filled with gifts from HFY workers. Strange fruits, pieces of carved shell, and small mechanical devices he didn't recognize. When he asked one of the HFY about it, the alien explained that Marcus was now considered a shell brother, someone who had fought alongside their kind and proven himself worthy of respect. But Zarathi's behavior had changed too, and not in a way that made Marcus comfortable. She no longer just followed him around the colony. Now she rarely left his side at all. She had somehow gotten permission to sleep outside his quarters at night. She insisted on testing his food before he ate it. When other humans tried to talk to Marcus, she watched them with obvious suspicion. "This is getting out of hand," Dave told Marcus over lunch. Zarathi sat at the next table, close enough to intervene if she sensed any threat. "She's acting like you're made of glass. She saved my life out there," Marcus said. "Maybe she's just being careful. Careful is one thing. This is something else entirely." Dave was right, and Marcus knew it. Zarathi's protectiveness had become almost overwhelming. When Marcus was assigned to routine maintenance work, she insisted on checking every tool for possible defects. When he went to the recreation area, she positioned herself where she could watch all the exits. The situation came to a head 2 weeks after their return. Marcus was called to Administrator Peterson's office for what he thought would be a routine debriefing about the Devourer attack. Instead, he found Peterson, 2 security officers, and a woman he didn't recognize. "Marcus, this is Dr. Sarah Chen from the Interspecies Relations Department," Peterson said. "She's here to discuss your situation." Dr. Chen was a serious-looking woman with short gray hair, and the kind of direct stare that made Marcus feel like he was being studied under a microscope. "Mr. Marcus," she began, "your relationship with the Vex-High individual designated Zarathi has created some concerns." "What kind of concerns?" "The kind that could destabilize interspecies relations across multiple colonies," Dr. Chen said bluntly. "What you're experiencing is unprecedented. A Kethavar bond between a human and a Vex-High has never been documented before." Peterson leaned forward in his chair. "Dr. Chen has been in contact with the Vex-High home colonies. Apparently your situation has caused quite a stir. I don't understand." "What situation?" Dr. Chen pulled out a datapad and began reading. "According to Vex-High cultural experts, the blood transfusion you performed has created more than just a Kethavar bond. Some of your genetic material was absorbed by the child during the procedure. In Vex-High law, this makes you legally a member of Zarathi's clan." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means that Zarathi now has not just the right, but the obligation to protect you from any perceived threat, including threats from your own species." As if summoned by the conversation, Zarathi appeared in the doorway. Marcus had no idea how she had gotten past security, but there she was, her antennae twitching as she sensed the tension in the room. "Marcus' friend safe?" she asked, looking directly at Dr. Chen. "See what I mean?" Peterson said. "She shows up wherever he is, regardless of security protocols." Dr. Chen stood up and spoke directly to Zarathi. "We need to discuss your intentions regarding Marcus." Zarathi's head tilted in that way that meant she was trying to understand complex human speech. After a moment, she began to speak in a mixture of her own language and broken human words. "Marcus is clan bond now, blood shared with child life. I protect from all danger, always. What if Marcus wants to leave the colony?" Dr. Chen asked. Zarathi's antennae drooped and she made a low clicking sound. "Leave dangerous. Many threats. Marcus, stay safe here. But what if he wants to go anyway?" The silence that followed was uncomfortable. Finally, Zarathi spoke in a voice that was barely audible. "Marcus, not leave. I not allow." Dr. Chen turned back to Marcus. "There's your answer. As far as she's concerned, you're no longer free to make your own decisions about your safety." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that in Zarathi's mind, she now has the right to override your personal autonomy if she believes you're putting yourself in danger. And according to Vex-High law, she's completely correct." Peterson stood up and walked to the window. "It gets worse. We've received communications from the Vex-High homeworlds. They're sending a delegation to verify the clan bond and potentially take you back to their territory for your own protection." "They can't do that. I'm a human citizen." "Actually, they can," Dr. Chen said. "The interspecies treaties we signed when we established this colony include provisions for cultural law enforcement. If the Vex-High can prove that you're legally a clan member, they have the right to protect you according to their customs." Marcus looked at Zarathi, who was watching the conversation with growing agitation. Her clicking had become rapid and urgent. "When will this delegation arrive?" Marcus asked. 3 days, Peterson said. "And Marcus, there's something else. The delegation isn't just coming to verify the bond. They're coming to take you to the Spiral Nebula colonies, where the Vex-Hi believe you'll be completely safe from any possible threat, including threats from other humans, Dr. Chen added. Marcus felt the walls closing in around him. In trying to save a child's life, he had somehow signed away his own freedom. The irony wasn't lost on him. What are my options? Dr. Chen exchanged glances with Peterson. Legally? None. The bond is real and it's binding under interspecies law, but practically you have a choice to make. What kind of choice? You can go willingly with the Vex-Hi delegation and live under their protection for the rest of your life. You'll be safe, comfortable, and honored, but you'll never be free to make your own decisions about risk. Or you can try to convince Zarathi that keeping you against your will isn't actually protecting you. But I should warn you, no human has ever successfully argued with Vex-Hi cultural imperatives. Marcus looked at Zarathi again. She had moved closer during the conversation, and was now standing directly beside his chair, one of her clawed hands resting protectively on his shoulder. There is one other possibility, Dr. Chen said slowly, but it's never been tried before and it would require cooperation from both human and Vex-Hi authorities. What is it? Integration. Instead of you joining Vex-Hi society or staying in human society, we could try to create something new. A joint colony where both species live together as equals, with you serving as a bridge between the cultures. Peterson frowned. That would require massive changes to our colonial charter, and the Vex-Hi would have to agree to it. The alternative is a diplomatic crisis that could affect human Vex-Hi relations for generations, Dr. Chen said. If we simply let them take Marcus, it sets a precedent that could endanger other humans. If we refuse to honor the clan bond, it could end our alliance with the Vex-Hi entirely. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. His personal choice would affect the relationship between two entire species. It was more pressure than any one person should have to bear. How long do I have to decide? The delegation arrives in 3 days, Peterson said. But Marcus, whatever you decide, you need to make peace with Zarathi first. She's not going to let you go easily, no matter what choice you make. As the meeting ended, Marcus walked back to his quarters with Zarathi beside him. He could feel her watching him, sensing his distress but not understanding its source. She had risked her life to protect him, and now her very devotion was threatening to take away everything he valued about being human. That night, Marcus lay awake thinking about freedom, family, and the price of doing what was right. Outside his door, he could hear Zarathi moving restlessly, as if she too sensed that something fundamental was about to change. The Vex-Hi delegation arrived exactly on schedule. 3 massive ships descended from the sky, each one larger than anything Marcus had ever seen. The lead vessel landed in the colony's main courtyard, and the ground shook under its weight. Marcus watched from his quarters as dozens of Vex-Hi emerged from the ships. They were all larger than Zarathi, with darker shells and more elaborate markings. These weren't workers or engineers. These were warriors and clan leaders come to claim what they believed was rightfully theirs. Ready? Dr. Chen asked as she knocked on his door. Marcus looked around his small room one last time. Everything he owned could fit in a single bag, but this place had been home for 2 years. If his plan didn't work, he might never see it again. As ready as I'll ever be. The colony's main conference room had been rearranged to accommodate both human and Vex-Hi delegations. Administrator Peterson sat at one end of a long table looking nervous. Dr. Chen was beside him with a stack of legal documents. Across from them sat 3 massive Vex-Hi, their compound eyes reflecting the room's lights. Zarathi stood behind Marcus's chair, her posture protective but tense. Marcus could tell she was intimidated by the delegation leaders. These were clearly Vex-Hi of much higher rank than she was. The largest of the aliens spoke first, his clicks and chirps translated by a sophisticated computer system. I am Kethrin, speaker for the Spiral Nebula clans. We have come to verify the clan bond and escort the protected one to safety. Dr. Chen leaned forward. With respect, Speaker Kethran, the individual you're referring to is a human citizen with rights under both human and interspecies law. Rights that became secondary when he accepted clan bond through blood sharing, Kethran replied. The protected one will come with us to live in honor and safety among his new family. Marcus had been quiet during the opening exchanges, but now he stood up. Zarathi immediately moved closer. ready to defend him from any perceived threat. With respect to both delegations, Marcus said, I'd like to propose a third option. The room fell silent. Marcus could feel everyone's attention focused on him, and he tried not to think about how his next words might affect relations between two species. I understand the clan bond. I accept that Zarathi saved my life and that I now have a place in Vexhai society, but I also understand that taking me away from human society against my will isn't actually protection. It's imprisonment. Kethran's antennae twitched, and what Marcus had learned was disapproval. The protected one does not understand the dangers of remaining among humans. Actually, I think I understand them better than you do, Marcus said. I've lived among humans my entire life. I know their strengths and weaknesses, but I've also learned about Vexhai strengths and weaknesses, and I think both species are missing something important. Explain, Dr. Chen said. Marcus took a deep breath. This was the moment everything depended on. Humans and Vexhai work together, but we don't really live together. We cooperate on projects, but we maintain separate societies. What if that's wrong? What if the real strength comes from true integration? What are you proposing? Peterson asked. I'm proposing that we create the first truly integrated colony, not a human colony with alien workers or a Vexhai colony with human advisors. A real joint society where both species live together, learn from each other, and protect each other. Kethran was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his tone was cautious. Such a thing has never been attempted. That doesn't mean it can't work, Marcus said. Speaker Kethran, your people value protection and family above all else. Humans value freedom and individual choice. What if we could create a society that honors both values? How? Zarathi asked. It was the first time she had spoken during the meeting. Marcus turned to face her. By you learning to trust that I can make good decisions about my own safety, and by me accepting that having family who cares about my well-being isn't a limitation on my freedom. For the next 4 hours, Marcus outlined his vision. A colony where humans and Vexhai shared living spaces, work assignments, and decision-making responsibilities. Where Vexhai protective instincts could be channeled into community defense, rather than individual control. Where human innovation could be enhanced by Vexhai patience and thoroughness. The negotiations were complex. Human colonial law had to be modified to allow for joint governance. Vexhai clan structure had to be adapted to include non-Vexhai members. Both sides had to agree to unprecedented levels of cultural integration. But slowly, carefully, a framework emerged. The new colony would be governed by a joint council with equal representation from both species. Families could be mixed species with adoption rights and legal protections for everyone. Work assignments would be based on ability and interest rather than species. And, most importantly for Marcus's situation, protection would be a community responsibility, rather than an individual obligation. The protected one would serve as cultural liaison, Kethran said as the negotiations neared completion. His role would be to help both species understand each other. And Zarathi would serve as community defense coordinator, Dr. Chen added. Her protective instincts would be focused on keeping everyone safe, not just Marcus. It wasn't perfect. There were still dozens of details to work out, legal frameworks to establish and cultural barriers to overcome, but it was a beginning. 6 months later, Marcus stood on a hill overlooking New Harmony, the first integrated human Vexhai settlement. The buildings were a mixture of human efficiency and Vexhai durability. The streets bustled with mixed groups working together on projects that neither species could have accomplished alone. Zarathi approached from behind, moving with the quiet grace that still amazed Marcus. She had adapted to her new role better than anyone had expected. Her protective instincts hadn't disappeared, but they had expanded to include the entire community. How is the integration proceeding? She asked. Her human language had improved dramatically over the past months. Better than I hoped, Marcus said. The Johnston family just adopted their second Vexhai child. The deep mining operation is ahead of schedule, because we're using both human technology and Vexhai tunnel sense, and the defensive perimeter you designed hasn't been breached once. And you? Are you content with this choice? Marcus thought about it. He was no longer free to wander the galaxy as he pleased, but he was also no longer alone in the universe. He had a family that included not just Zarathi and her child, but dozens of humans and Vexhai who had chosen to build something new together. I'm content, he said. Are you? Zarathi's antennae moved in the pattern Marcus had learned meant deep satisfaction. The child life you saved is now learning human mathematics alongside Vex-High philosophy. The bond between us has become a bridge between worlds. This is protection in its truest form. As they watched the sun set over their integrated community, Marcus reflected on the strange path that had brought him here. A moment of compassion in a collapsing tunnel had led to the first real partnership between human and alien civilizations. In the distance, he could see children of both species playing together, their games a mixture of human creativity and Vex-High precision. These children would grow up thinking of interspecies cooperation as normal. They would be the first generation to truly belong to both worlds. What do you think they'll accomplish? Marcus asked, nodding toward the children. Things we cannot imagine, Zarathi replied. They will have the best of both our peoples, human curiosity and Vex-High wisdom, human adaptability and Vex-High loyalty. A year later, when the first delegation from Earth arrived to study the new Harmony experiment, they found something unprecedented in human history. A society where the boundaries between us and them had become meaningless, where protection and freedom coexisted, where a single act of kindness had grown into a new model for civilization itself. Marcus still wore the clan markings that identified him as Zarathi's family, but now he also wore the insignia of the Integrated Colonial Service, representing both species equally. He had become what he had never expected to be, a bridge between worlds, a symbol of what was possible when compassion transcended the fear of the unknown. And sometimes, late at night when the two moons of Kepler 442b hung bright in the alien sky, Marcus would remember the moment when he chose to give his blood to save a dying child. It had been such a simple decision at the time. The right thing to do, nothing more. He had no way of knowing then that simple acts of human kindness could change the course of history itself.